Welcome to another episode of Distorted Opinions. This week, we're doing another one of our gear talks, and you may be surprised to see that I believe this is the first gear talk we've done where, hey look, all three of us are here. And today, we're going to be continuing our conversation on drums, and Professor Sparrow has prepared a Drumsticks 101 lesson for us.
Yes.
I don't want to speak for Matt, but I know that much like cymbals, I know next to nothing about drumsticks. So I have a feeling that I'm about to become a bit more of an expert by the time we're done with this show. So why don't we get right into it? Ted, what have you got for us today?
Sure. I see Matt's busted out his notepad. He's ready for taking some notes on this.
Let's do it.
Here we go. So as a drummer, a lot of times when you're just getting started, you buy whatever drumsticks are cheap and whatever you get at the store, just, Guitar Center, wherever you buy your drumsticks. And it didn't occur to me until much later, after playing drums for a couple of years, that there are so many different varieties. And so what I have for you guys today is definitely a breakdown into what it all means, parts of a drumstick, the anatomy of it, the materials made, what the different size numbers and lengths are, how it affects the drums, the playability of the stick, all of that encompassed into this particular episode. And so even if you're a drummer that's been playing for a number of years, perhaps there's something in here that you'll hear and make you realize that, hey, maybe I'm not playing the stick that's the best for me. I've just been doing the same thing for a million years, and I just never contemplated changing up my style, because certainly in researching a lot of this material for today, I've learned quite a bit and am second guessing some of my choices, even though I'm comfortable with what I play. So
Sure.
All that being said, moving into it, for anyone that isn't aware, there are many different companies that make drumsticks. There's Vader, Vic Firth, ProMark. So there's certainly a number of different companies out there, a lot of different styles. And when it comes to the drummer, the size of your hands come into play, because you have big hands. You want a stick that you'll be able to grip appropriately and get the same drumming ability. But if you're a student or a kid that's learning to play, you'd need to get smaller sticks or something that would be appropriate for the size of hand that you have. Mm-hmm. So jumping into the anatomy of a drumstick, for the video version of this, I've got a number of different props, but I'll do my best to describe all of the different parts for the audio listeners. So at the very end of the drumstick is the tip. Makes sense, right? And then there is something called the taper. So from the main body of the stick, the angle at which that kind of leads to the tip of the stick gets narrower at that point. That's called the taper. And then the shoulder of the stick is right where that taper ends and the main body of the stick begins. So the drumstick makes up basically those four different parts. And all four affect the sound of the drum and how you play the drumstick. Go figure. So,
of course.
Right?
Makes perfect sense.
So when it comes to drumsticks, the diameter and length of a stick goes into a big portion of that. So if you're aware of drumsticks at all, they do come in a numbering system. Number 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 8, and 9. I don't know what happened to 4 and 6. They just opted not to be in the list for whatever reason. But so the number determines the stick length. So the longer the stick, it changes the balance of where you hold the stick and how you hold it. So the numbering, again, just goes for length. For myself, I mainly play 5A sticks, which are 16 inches in length. But obviously there's shorter ones at I think 15 and a half, or 15 inches, and then there's on the long end 17 and a quarter inch sticks, which I don't know. That's not necessary to me for what I play and how I play, but that's certainly some fun facts in there. For 5 sticks, as I said, the higher the number, sometimes it means that the sticks are longer. In the case of the 7s, that's true. I've used 7As in the past, and they're just longer sticks. The 7As are lighter weight, but they're just too lightweight. Not for my style. I typically play, rock and metal types of music. No surprise if you listen to the podcast. And for the 7s, they're longer, they're a bit thinner. They lend themselves better to more jazz drumming because be playing not as heavy on that style of music.
Sure.
And then, so we talked about the number, and I talked about 5A. What does the letter mean? So it turns out that the letter system started back in the 1900s, which mind blown, right? The letter A stands for orchestra. B was for marching band and concert bands. There was an S for a street band, and then Gretsch went crazy and used the letter D for dance band. So there's 4 different letter band categories, right? You guys are all like, whoa, mind blown.
Orchestra, marching band, and
street band.
Street band, I get.
And a dance band.
Dancing?
Maybe it was like I don't know.
Like disco?
I don't know if it was that old, because I feel like Gretsch was, I don't know. I feel like it would be more in the 50s, but that's my opinion on it.
Just more than the tip.
Yeah, there we go. Said. I was waiting. I knew everyone. There's so many innuendos possible for this.
There might be innuendos in this cast.
I've been holding in some very immature laughter through a few descriptions, I'm not gonna lie. My face might register it if I actually cut to a shot where you see it during the video portion, but
listen,
I'll wait for someone else to be immature first.
Listen, some people, the taper and the tipper are pretty important to some people in this world. Length does matter sometimes.
Hey.
But it's
exactly. We need a sound clip just to drop in. But
we can do that.
I know, right? So
so A, B, and then
S,
and then
D.
And D. So forget about E, F, and everything else.
Right. And so to be fair, I typically only see A and B letters primarily. I actually have a few 5B. Oh, this one in particular. This is a 5B. Kind of hard to read. The B stands out.
Marching band stick.
So that definitely is. I've used these from time to time, but like clothing, drumstick manufacturers can both make a 5A, but those are completely different. Because why not? From a drumming standpoint, and when you're in the store and you're trying to find that perfect stick, and you like the feel of a 5A, say, there's 3 numbers at the end that you might need to research. So you can have a 5A, but it could end in 0.500 or 0.565. And those are actually the diameter thickness in inches of that stick. So a 5A.565 is 5 and 65 hundredths thick of for a drumstick. For example.
So question.
Yes.
That's the stick, not so the tip portion can be different as well, right? Is that
Yep.
so? That's
tips
separate
are
from.
independent of everything, correct? So we talked about
Okay.
length, which is obviously straightforward. Now we're talking about the diameter of the
The
drumstick.
actual stick. Okay.
Correct. And so when the part that you're gripping, if you are, again, goes to hand size, do you need more stick to grip, or less, depending what's comfortable? Yep, here we go.
I'm sorry, I just can't even. Usually I can hold it in. This time I'll be the one.
You broke ice on that one.
Hey.
You broke the ice on that one.
So the fun fact about the 5B that I'm holding, it's a 0.595, so it's super thick.
Thick wood.
It's a thick stick.
The thick
All right.
stick. Thick stick.
Oh boy.
In case there was any mumbling. Thick stick.
ST. All right.
Not to be related with the tip.
So if you want to talk about actual thick sticks, the 2B,
That'd be a great band name.
Right?
Introducing Thick Sticks.
So the 2B drumstick is the most common size, and it is the thickest drumstick available. And as I mentioned, the 7s are the most common size for a thin stick, which is, as I mentioned, perfect for jazz drumming because you're just not wailing on drums. You're being more soft and accenting a bit more for that play style.
So let me ask you. So
Yes.
you mentioned about sizes being 1, 2, 3, 5, and 7. 7 being the thinnest. So is it kind of the opposite in number form? So 1 is almost like incredibly thick to 7 being thinner.
So the numbers are designate a particular length.
Oh,
The letters go into the thickness of
okay,
a drumstick. So I have a 5A and then a 5B, and it's hard to tell, but it's just slightly, and we're talking hundredths of an inch difference.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But that little bit of difference in the grip really changes the playability of a particular drumstick.
Right. Okay.
So now that we covered length and width, that's what he said. Let's get to the taper and the tip and how that changes sound.
And that's what she said.
This is too much.
Takes 2 to tango.
I just have to ask, when you were doing all your research last night, is this where you envisioned this going, like this much
No, it is
immature
far
laughter?
more derailed than I anticipated.
Okay. He's like all serious over here, trying to give his talk on sticks. He spent a lot of time, and Matt and I are like laughing and making inappropriate jokes.
You know, it's okay. It's okay because I'm sure later on down the road, if we do a gear talk on strings, we're gonna have innuendos about the G string. So
I will be prepared to derail your future gear chat with all the G-string jokes I can come up with.
A precedent has been set.
Clearly. This is what happens when we
boy.
get 3 of us on to one particular gear chat.
very, very much so.
All right.
All right.
So next part I want to talk about is the taper. So again, the taper is that angle from the tip down to the main body of the drumstick. And you may find, this is a good example, that depending on the drumstick, the angle of that taper changes. So that means there's either more or less material towards the end of the drumstick as you're playing. So the more material there is, the more front heavy that drumstick is. It changes the rebound when you're trying to do a drum roll or just the reflex that you're getting off of that drum. And because there's more weight on the front end, you're going to get more power to it. So you're going to get, louder sound, because there's more surface area behind, a cymbal crash, for example, or something like that. And so we've talked about taper. Last there is for drumstick anatomy would be the tip. And the tip's very important. Just Too
Yes,
easy. Too easy. So
sometimes it's hard.
there are a variety of different drum tips. So there's barrel, acorn, bead, arrow, teardrop. I've seen just a variety of different kinds of shapes for the different tips. And so depending on the size of that, or there might be a larger surface area to hit the drum head with, so that you might get more volume depending on the drumstick tip that you choose. I know marching band back in high school, I've definitely seen a lot of beaded tips for that particular snare drum playing. But again, from a drumming perspective and a drum kit perspective, it really depends on the type of music you're playing and what's comfortable. I prefer this particular acorn, some might call it arrow style. It's very common, pretty easy to get in a bulk pack, because why not? But that's something else to consider. So all that said, that's just some mind-blowing facts about the anatomy of drumsticks, and just a couple of other things I want to mention about the different extra things about the tips. Actually, I forgot to talk about nylon tips. So these two actually have nylon tips. So nylon, instead of a wood tip, creates a brighter sound on cymbals. So depending on the style of song or the type of song, I've definitely, even on jams, switched over to a nylon tip to play if I'm doing a more cymbal work than actual, rock and roll type of stuff. So it just changes the tone that you're going to get depending on what style you're playing.
Right.
And then,
so basically,
yeah,
for those that are introduced to this episode and drums 101, from a guitar standpoint, you were saying each stick has different types of tones. So like a guitarist, a pedal could make a difference in the sound. The string gauge could all differentiate when it comes down to sound too, even for bass players as well. So that's pretty unique to know that even as drumstick is not just a one singular type of aspect or object. It also plays into multiple aspects too, not only for the player but also for the versatility of playing.
Exactly. And so that, because of that in particular and how many different varieties there are, it's mind-blowing. There's definitely the perfect stick for someone out there because of how customizable it can be.
Right.
Because you can get a 5A drumstick, you have the right diameter, you have the right length, you have the right taper, and you want to just convert over to a nylon tip over a wood tip. You've got your perfect drumstick. You've already got your feel in your hands, but now the tip is completely, you can customize that or get one customized to play that perfect song that you're wanting to play. So I feel like all of the first three pieces, once you find the perfect stick in that way, the tip is just the last bit of accentuation that you can have to really tailor that final bit of the way for whatever you're trying to play. So
perfect. Now, Ted, let me ask you, obviously, musician for over 2 decades, subject matter expert, when it comes down to, drumming and, even the utilization of drums as well, both from a, different types of styles kit to even the electronic kit. If you were to say, there's the Distorted Opinions Ted signature stick, what are some of the elements that come right to your mind? If you were to make your own stick, what would it be?
Yeah, no, I have a subsection for some of that coming up in just a couple notes here. But I would say, because I've played 7s and they're a little long, a little light. I really do like the 5A stick, and even just talking about the different, researching this, and I'm reevaluating all the different stick varieties that I have. Um, I have, like I said, a 5B in my hand right now, and sure, I can get along playing pretty well with this, but it's thicker by a smidge. We're talking hundredths of an inch on diameter, but over the 5A, you know what? 5A is just a little bit quicker. It's a little bit thinner. I mean, in diameter slightly. And I just prefer the 5A. And in this case, Vic Firth American Classic 5A. This one's hickory, which hickory would be my designated wood type for a drumstick. But yeah, I think I've decided, I've settled in on the Vic Firth 5A. I've only played Pro Mark sticks a couple of times. I've played Vader a couple of times, but I just tend to find myself going back to Vic Firth for whatever reason. So I don't know. That seems to be, I would say, my my designated stick for the time being.
Perfect. And obviously, for those that are able to view, this podcast in a video segment, we Ted just shown, he was, doing some drum movements with both sticks. So obviously you could tell a difference in weight too,
Absolutely.
from what you were mentioning that, this one seems a little lighter. So it just goes to show that even those hundredths, even maybe thousandths worth in diameter can make a difference.
Yep, and it's just, again, it's gripability. You have, whether you feel like you have more or less control based on what you're gripping with that type of thickness. Right. A couple other things I wanted to point out. We didn't talk about the different types of wood.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah.
So there's three main wood types. There's maple, hickory, and oak. Maple is, as you imagine, after wood. It's not as durable. It is lighter in weight. So again, we're talking about, you like the gripability, you have the for balance, in how you hold the stick. Now we can get one level deeper. Is the material lighter for that grip and size, length, all of that together. Hickory is what I typically use. Those are more durable. They're a bit heavier in weight. And oak, as you can imagine, it's even heavier than that.
Right.
And yet oak can also produce such a bright sound. So it comes down to preference. It comes down to playing a lot of different sticks because it is all in feel. I mean, it's whatever your preference is, going through all of these different varieties, coming down to that one stick that you really enjoy playing.
Ted, for those that are, obviously starting off drumming and, listening and figuring out what type of stick they are using, what would you notice that, would you say that there's a little bit of a price difference depending on the wood too? So take, for instance, obviously, for those sticks that are made out of oak, because the heavier, would you say that they're probably maybe a couple dollars more than what you would say is your standard stick?
Definitely. I would say, maple can be the cheapest because it's the most, least durable. It's just lightweight. In my opinion, I would guess this one's not marked. This one actually was a gift that had my name engraved on it. So just by analyzing this stick, I would assume that this would be a maple stick. But hickory is not too bad. Price wise, $8 to $12 for a pair is not unreasonable. There's packs you can get bundled together, and Guitar Center will put them on sale. So I tend to get a stick brick, if you will, and ride those through until they all break. I'm one to ride a stick all the way through, losing. I'm not gigging at this point, right? So I'm not too picky on, the perfect stick and making sure I'm getting, that quality every single time. So I'll just tear through a stick until it just the top's missing. I'm like, okay, into the fire it goes, and
Yep.
pull out another one.
And we've seen that happen in plenty of jams too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Plenty of jams will be jamming, go whoa! It's
Yeah.
almost like an arrow going right through you. Oh, hold on. Or keep going, please, keep playing the same riff. I'll jump right in a minute.
Yep, just grab another, jump right in. So one thing, if you're watching the video version, you'll notice that the 5A that I have here in my hand is black, as opposed to the normal wood grain that most sticks generally appear as. This is because it's a quote unquote an active grip, so it's been dipped in a very thin rubber, which just if you're playing sweaty, if you will, or you need just a smidge more grip, it just the whole stick is coated, so you're able to hopefully not let a stick go flying errantly while you're playing. So that's another feature that the modern technology of drumsticks have these days. Obviously, you don't have to buy them this way. You can certainly get the wood grain, easy enough to do. But this was just one of the many varieties. I went digging through my stick pile. I'm like, oh, look at this. Tear this thing open. This would be a great example. So definitely different factors there. And then I know earlier we talked about signature sticks. And so a lot of drumstick companies, Vic Firth, Vader, and ProMark, for example, again, they sponsor different drummers, and the drummer will create their perfect drumstick, and then they'll mass produce them. So Chris Adler from formerly Lamb of God has his own signature ProMark drumstick. This here in particular is a Steve Gadd Vic Firth signature. It is about a half a centimeter shorter than the 5As that I prefer. Beaded nylon tip, excuse me. And so it's a little bit, the taper is much longer. A good portion of the drumstick is tapered. So again, it's fun to play, and if you have a drumming idol, getting a signature stick and seeing like, oh, this is how they play. I could, this is how it feels to sit behind their kit using their sticks type of deal. But I haven't really taken a deep dive on any signatures. These were just given to me from a friend at one of the past couple jams. And so I'm just working through these. And you can notice that the rubber active grip comes right off when you're playing hi-hat. So really easy to wear that through. But again, just different things to note about drumsticks.
That's great to know. And that's also great to know too. So we heard about your idol and whatnot. And I'm sure that there are other drummers out there too that some of our listeners may also know as well. I'm sure that Taylor Hawkins from Foo Fighters may have his own signature too. Joey Jordison from during his time in Slipknot, but I'm sure he probably also still has his own signature sticks too.
They keep on adding new drummers to that list. I know. I mean, and they cycle through. I feel like my wife and I, when we went to a concert a million years ago, we caught the drumstick at a concert, and it's a Vic Firth signature, and I couldn't quite make out the name on the stick, so I wound up Googling it, and he had already been dropped, because it was already, we're talking 15 years ago. It was a signature stick at the time, but I'm wondering if it's no longer available. I didn't find any other results for it. So I feel like they have a catalog of artists that they're sponsoring for the time being, and then eventually, new people come in, and unless they're, absolute idols, a Neil Peart, if you will, they might cycle through, drop some, get somebody else type of deal.
That's great to know.
So yeah, and then the last one-off thing I will mention on drumsticks, because it's very unique, is the ProMark Hot Rod, which is it's very
like
different.
A bundle of sticks.
Yeah, it's for the listeners. It is it's 19 individual wooden rods that are very small, and they're been bundled together. And when you're drumming and with an actual drumstick, you get a lot of force, and because it's an individual, solid piece of wood, because it's broken out into 19 different individual rods that have been bundled together, when you actually hit the drum, you get a much softer tone. The impact is distributed amongst the 19 different rods that make up this particular stick. And so I will typically use this when there's still electric guitar, but quieter, or maybe acoustic, where you don't need to really wail on the drums, and you can be a lot softer. And then you just kind of hear that thwap type of sound just against my hand here. So, I mean, that's just another drumstick that's unique to the different things that I wind up playing with on a particular jam, depending on what is being called for. So nylon tip, wood tip, these particular hot rod drumsticks, those are the main three that I wind up cycling through, depending on what we're playing during the night.
And sometimes maybe occasionally the chopsticks when you're having Chinese food.
I mean, these are a bit thinner than chopsticks, to be fair, but I'm sure they can make do in a pinch.
Well, that's great. Wow.
But we didn't even talk about, so I don't know if this falls under the category of sticks, but brushes I know are also very common for jazz drumming for a softer sound, and they have a very different sound than using sticks. I don't know if you know anything about brushes, if there's any commonality as far as like different gauges for brushes or anything like that, or if they're all kind of, I would assume there's some variations in those as well.
I have a pair of brushes. I feel like any drummer should, just because you never know what you're going to play.
Sure.
So I'm not as familiar with brushes. I'm not very good at brush drumming. Typically, you think of brushes being used, there's not really a hi-hat. You have the brush, it's on the head of the snare drum, and you're just wiping it around to get that kind of shuffle type of sound that goes with it. And yes, so brushes are even softer than these particular hot rod sticks, which is, for what I play, this is soft enough, but I can go softer because I have those brushes.
Right.
Because so they're just metal wires splayed, and they're just real soft for cymbals and things like that.
Yeah.
So it really, if you want to play real quiet, brushes are the way to go.
And that's what I was going to ask you was, brushes, they're metal. Do they also come in a wood form as well?
I
Maybe
believe
really
it's
thin?
only metal.
Only metal. Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know that.
But yeah, so that was my absolute clinic, or felt like a clinic, of talking through all things drumsticks. So hopefully, I feel like you guys are both appear enlightened. I don't know about the listener listening to this. Hopefully there's something in here that was of news to you. Maybe it makes you think of how you play drums, if you do play drums or you're thinking about playing drums. And I don't mean to intimidate you about all the possible stick varieties that are out there. If you're starting out on a drum set, just grab 5As from whatever brand, and just because that's the drum standard size for drum sets, just grab a 5A set, see how you like it, and then go from there. If you're going to start from anywhere. So, it's
good to know
it's
that.
a fun hobby, and yeah, you can really nerd out on on your playability, just with the sticks alone.
So I have another question for you, Ted. So obviously, we briefly talked on, your regular kit, and then a electronic kit, that are starting to come out now too, or have been out within the past, I want to say, or I'm sorry, starting to become a lot more popular within the next in the last 10 years, whatnot. But
Right.
would you say that using a kit like that, um, compared to what if somewhere to if you have your listener out there who may not have a regular kit, okay, but has a electronic kit,
Mm-hmm.
what would you advise as far as a stick wise to utilize those types of electronic drums?
Sure. I also have a digital drum kit that I do play on occasion. I've always found that a digital kit is not as responsive. I mean, or it responds differently than an acoustic drum set.
Mm-hmm.
So hitting a tom, hitting a cymbal on a digital kit is a different experience than actually playing a drum, in my opinion. Hi-hat responsiveness, the whole nine. So I would say, again, it would come down to whatever the length and diameter of a stick would be most comfortable, because again, that's strictly just balance and grip. But when it comes to drum tips, I mean, you don't need to worry about nylon because you're not getting the responsiveness of an actual cymbal. Wood tip would be more than ample, because to
Oh
Uh-oh.
yeah. Oh no. For those
Oh
that are
no.
listening, we just froze, but it's okay because that's. Oh, we gotta get a still frame of that too.
Yeah. Uh
Well, that's pretty unique and whatnot. While we wait for Ted to for the connection to come back and whatnot, Kayla, I don't know about you, but like I'm starting to know a lot more about drumsticks than what I just visually see. If I were to walk into like a guitar center or maybe a music shop.
For sure. Yeah, no. I think, I was going to mention to Ted, and I'll say it now cuz he's disappeared and we're waiting for him to come back, but I feel like you could compare the various features of drumsticks that he's explained in this episode much to the gauge of guitar strings and the different brands of guitar strings and the different materials the guitar strings are made out of. So for me, I always go back to how does it compare to guitar, and so I feel like there's that kind of similarity. You have strings where there's different gauges, different materials. Everybody's got a preference for that stuff, and I feel like it's kind of the same way with drumsticks. So welcome
now
back,
that I'm
Ted.
back.
Well, welcome
Hey,
back.
sorry about that. I don't know what the heck happened.
That's all right.
Anyway, so what I was trying to say was that for a drumstick, you're really only trying to trigger the hit sensor on a digital drum kit.
Mhm.
And so as long as you're accomplishing that, whatever stick would be comfortable to do that particular job is fine. But again, no need to seek out any unique drum tips or anything like that, because you're just tripping a hit sensor basically. So
Perfect.
yeah, sorry, that was a bit of a detour to get to that answer, but I made it.
Oh no! Well, when you were when you were coming back and whatnot, Kayla and I were just discussing that. From a guitar standpoint, this is pretty educational. When I walk into a guitar center, there's the drum area, and of course, not really being experienced in that aspect, and I'm thinking, okay, sticks are just sticks. Okay, no, it's different. Just like guitars. Okay, strings are meant to have a different type of aspect to them. Picks can have a different type of aspect to them. So it's good to know that it also works the same way from a drummer standpoint too. That whether it's a a snare head to, bass drum to even, the types of material of sticks to even like the smallest aspect, it can make a big difference, when it comes down to the versatility of the player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've actually seen for material. I saw an ad for, I think it was Promark, does like a firebrand stick. So they take hickory and then they char it, and it hardens the wood, so it adds durability to the stick. Like,
oh wow!
Drumming is the stick world is out of control. Like, they're coming up with the craziest different things. As much as we try to talk about the quote unquote basics, there's definitely more extreme examples, different materials. There's plastics, which is to me kind of nuts. All sorts of different other things going into sticks these days. So,
and I know like a head has drumsticks that have we were talking before the show, I think it's an aluminum rod in the middle of them, which I assume changes the balance of the stick and also
sure, and how heavy it is.
Yeah.
And if it's a aluminum rod within a drumstick, you can only play it so far. I'd play it to the metal and start destroying my cymbals with it, right? So
right.
Drummer goes smash.
Piece of brass comes flying right at you.
Right. And we talked about cymbals. They're expensive, so you don't want to do that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, I assume in comparison, sticks are significantly cheaper than cymbals.
Oh, right.
I don't know.
Yeah,
we didn't really talk about...
They're in like the $10, $12 pair range on average. So, I mean, you can get super cheap sticks. I think I got, when I was starting out, I got a stick brick, had about... I think it was buy 5 sets of sticks, get 1 free, and it was $20.
Wow.
And they were the cheapest sticks. I would break one about one a week because I assume it was maple. It was the most, I mean, it may have been made of balsa wood for all I could tell. Like, it just disintegrated in no time at all.
Chopsticks, perhaps.
Yeah, could be chopsticks. Could be chopsticks. But that's where like the hickory comes in for me, and so those are more durable, and I'm not breaking them anytime. Not all that often, I should say.
Sure. Ted, what's probably the most unique type of material in a drumstick you've ever seen, or maybe even heard of?
I mean, I think I've seen aluminum. Or heard of aluminum drumsticks, which to me, I understand it's a soft metal. It will certainly, I just don't know how, I've never used it. I've heard of it, and it just don't know how that would play. The way I play, I would be afraid for my cymbals. I mean, I know the metal's soft, but really that metal on metal, I mean, that would be a very unique sound, but, I don't know. That kind of scares me a bit. But yeah,
I'd be nervous too.
The world would just stick to wood, please.
Stick to the wood.
Stick to the wood.
The thicker, the better.
If that's what you prefer.
And that's what she said.
There it is.
Oh boy.
So yeah, that's all I had for you guys for drumsticks for today, and hopefully everyone learned at least something or could take away something from this. And if you forget, you can always come back and listen to this episode.
That's great. And for those that are listening and whatnot, if you're a drummer out there, give us a shout out. Tell us what sticks do you use? Do you use 5A? Do you use 5B? Let us know if you even play signature sticks. We want to know if you were to go ahead and create your own signature stick, what would it be? That's what the show's about. Give us a reach out. And other than that, this is great. This is something educational. And, Ted, thanks for telling us about everything about, sticks. And obviously it's great being as a full group for our very first gear talk as well. So
Oh, yeah, finally all together.
finally. So perfect. So other than that, Kayla, what do you got?
Yeah, so I got the usual wrap up here.
Take us out.
Yeah, so, as Matt said, reach out to us. There's a few ways you can do that. You can go to our Anchor page at anchor.fm/distorted opinions, and you can leave us a voicemail there. Or if you prefer, you can send us an email at distortedopinionshow@gmail.com. We're also on social media, so you can drop us a comment on any of those platforms as well. They're all listed on our Anchor page if you're not sure how to find us. And if you got a suggestion for a future gear talk, or maybe you'd like to be on a gear talk to talk about a favorite piece of gear, reach out to us and let us know. We'd love to have you. We've been having more guests on, and it's always a fun time. And with that, thank you to everybody for tuning in. We hope you learned a lot about drumsticks. I know I did. And I feel far more educated. Not that I am ever going to be able to play drums, but if the day came, I feel like I could go into a store and have a better understanding of the different types of sticks and not look like a total noob trying to figure out what to play.
You'd be schooling other people, I promise you.
Perhaps, yeah, possibly. So, thank you, Ted. We appreciate the lesson in drumsticks today, and we look forward to bringing you guys more gear talks in the future. And we'll see you next week for another episode of Distorted Opinions. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you.